You ever get told to stop doing the right thing because technically you're doing the wrong thing? Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me that morning. Standing in the middle of someone else's driveway, water running, concrete half clean, and a woman in a wheelchair watching me like I might be her last chance at something as simple as getting to her own front door safely. And then this guy in a pressed polo with an HOA badge clipped to his belt, telling me flat out, shut it down right now. Now I didn't wake up that day looking for trouble. I was just doing what I always do, driving through a quiet neighborhood outside Clearwater, Florida, lining up my next pressure washing job. Coffee in one hand, radio low. The kind of morning that feels like nothing's going to happen until something does. And I remember exactly when I noticed that driveway, because it didn't just look dirty, it looked dangerous. Like the kind of slick surface that doesn't just ruin your shoes, it puts you on the ground before you even know what happened. Dark patches, algae buildup, years of neglect baked into the concrete like it had just been forgotten by everyone, including whoever owned the place. I almost kept driving, I really did. But something about it stuck with me, maybe because I've seen what those surfaces can do, especially to older folks. One wrong step, and that's it. Broken hip, hospital bills, life flipped upside down. So I slowed down, pulled over, sat there for a second debating if I was about to waste my own time. Then I noticed the notice. Bright orange paper taped crooked near the garage, flapping just enough in the breeze to catch your eye. One of those HOA violation warnings, the kind that looks official enough to scare you, but vague enough to stress you out. So I grabbed my hat, walked up, knocked on the door, not really knowing what I was expecting, and when it opened, just a crack at first, I saw her. Small frame, gray hair pulled back, hands resting on the wheels of her chair like they'd been there a long time. And she looked at me, with that mix of caution and tiredness you only see in people who've had to say no to help more times than they wanted to. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice soft but guarded. "Yeah. I was just passing by. Saw the surface out there. It's pretty slick. Thought I'd check if you needed help cleaning it." She let out this quiet breath, almost like a laugh but without the humor. Needed? Yes. Able to deal with it? Not really. And that's when she opened the door a little wider. Enough for me to see how slow she moved, even just adjusting her position. Like every inch cost her something. Her name was Marlene, she told me, and she used to work as a nursing assistant. Spent years helping people get in and out of beds, wheelchairs, showers, making sure nobody slipped, nobody got hurt. And then one day she fell herself. Bad enough that complications took away her ability to walk altogether. Funny how life flips like that, right? Now the driveway that had become her daily obstacle. "I don't go out unless I have to," she said, glancing past me toward the concrete like it was something alive. "Too risky. Last time I tried, my chair slipped just a little. That was enough." I asked about the notice, and she gave me that look, the one that says she's already tired of explaining. "They've sent 3, she said. Says it's a safety violation. Says I need to fix it. I don't disagree. She paused, hands tightening slightly on the wheels. "I just can't do it myself anymore. And hiring someone, well, that's not really in the budget these days." There was no self-pity in her voice, which somehow made it hit harder. Just facts, just reality. So I shrugged, trying to keep it light. "Well, I've got the equipment in my truck. I can take care of it, no charge." She looked at me like I'd just offered her something way bigger than what I said. Like it wasn't just cleaning concrete. "You don't have to do that." "I know," I said. "I want to." And here's the thing, she didn't say yes right away, not because she didn't need help, but because she understood something I hadn't fully thought through yet. "They're already watching this place," she said quietly. "I don't want more trouble." I glanced back at the orange notice, then at the driveway. "I'll be careful," I told her. "Just enough to make it safe." There was a long pause, the kind where you can almost hear someone weighing risk against hope. And then she nodded, just once. "Okay, just be careful." So I got to work, hooked up the hoses, fired up the machine, and the second that water hit the surface, you could see the difference immediately. A clean strip, cutting through years of grime, like a path finally opening up. And I remember thinking, yeah, this is exactly why I stopped. I was maybe 10 minutes in, not rushing, just steady, making sure the runoff stayed controlled as best as I could, when I heard a voice behind me. "Sir, you need to stop immediately." I turned around and there he was, standing at the edge of the driveway like he owns not just the property, but the air around it too. And just like that, everything changed. He didn't raise his voice right away, which somehow made it worse. You know that kind of controlled tone people use when they're already convinced they're right and you're already wrong. Yeah, that was him. Mid-40s maybe, clean cut, sunglasses even though the sun wasn't that bright yet, clipboard tucked under one arm like it was part of his identity. "You can't be doing this without prior approval," he said, stepping a little closer, eyes scanning the hose, the machine, the water running down the driveway like it was evidence at a crime scene. I wiped my hands on my jeans, tried to keep things calm. "Morning. I'm just cleaning the surface. It's a safety issue. It's slippery." He nodded once, like he'd already heard that argument 100 times. "And I'm telling you this property is already in violation, and what you're doing right now could make it worse." Behind me, I could feel Marlene watching from just inside the doorway, quiet, not interrupting, but present. And that changed how this whole thing felt. This wasn't just a conversation anymore. It was a moment. "I'm not making it worse," I said, keeping my voice even. "I'm fixing the problem you flagged." That's when his tone sharpened, just a notch, enough to let you know the patient's window was closing. "You're introducing runoff into the street," he said, pointing toward the edge of the driveway, where water was slowly making its way down. "That's a violation of HOA guidelines, and potentially municipal stormwater regulations. Debris can enter the drains. There are procedures for this." "Procedures, yeah." I glanced down at the water, then back at him. "I'm controlling it as much as I can. This isn't industrial work, it's just surface cleaning." "It doesn't matter," he cut in, a little louder now. "You need approval, you need containment, you need to follow the process." And there it was, the word that always seems to matter more than the outcome: process. From inside, Marlene spoke up, her voice softer but steady. "He's just helping me make it safe." The officer finally looked past me, actually acknowledging her for the first time. "Ma'am, I understand your situation," he said, and I'll give him this. He didn't sound cruel, just distant. "But the rules are in place to protect the entire community. If someone slips, if there's contamination in the drainage system, liability becomes an issue." Funny thing is, he wasn't wrong. That's what made it complicated. I've worked in enough neighborhoods like this to know how strict they can be, and why. One bad fall, one lawsuit, and suddenly everyone's pointing fingers. And stormwater rules, those can get serious fast if you're pushing chemicals or heavy debris into public systems. But here's the thing he didn't say. None of that mattered to Marlene, when she couldn't even get across her own driveway without risking a fall. I turned slightly, just enough to catch her eye, and she gave me the smallest shake of her head, like she was already preparing to tell me to stop, to not make things worse for her. And I could see it. The fear wasn't about the driveway anymore. It was about fines, warnings, pressure, the kind of slow squeeze that wears people down. "Look," I said, turning back to him, trying one more time to keep this reasonable. "I can finish this in under 20 minutes. No chemicals, just water. I'll keep the runoff minimal. Then I'm out of here, and the safety issue is gone." Now we were maybe 6 feet apart, and the air felt tighter somehow. "Or," he said, tilting his head slightly, "you can stop now, file the proper request, wait for approval, and have it done in compliance." I let out a short breath, couldn't help it. "How long does that take?" "A few weeks, depending on review." "A few weeks." I looked past him, down the driveway, imagining Marlene trying to navigate that surface for another few weeks. "Yeah, no." "So in the meantime," I said, "she just what? Stays inside." His jaw tightened just a little, like he didn't like the direction this was going. "She should take appropriate precautions." "Appropriate precautions, man." I nodded slowly, more to myself than to him, because now it wasn't really about convincing him anymore. It was about deciding what I was going to do. And you know those moments where everything kind of narrows down, like the noise fades and it's just you, the choice, and whatever kind of person you're about to be. Yeah, this was one of those. I looked at the driveway again, really looked this time. The clean strip I'd already made stood out bright against the dark grime, like proof that this wasn't hypothetical. It was working. It was making a difference, right there, right now. Then I looked at Marlene. She hadn't moved, hands still on the wheels, eyes going back and forth between me and him, like she already knew this wasn't going to end clean. And finally, I looked back at the officer. Technically, I said, choosing my words carefully, "You're right." He blinked, maybe not expecting that, but this isn't a technical situation. For a second, neither of us said anything, and then he shook his head, almost like he'd heard enough. "If you continue," he said, voice firm again, "I'll have to document it. That could mean additional fines for the homeowner." There it was, the pressure point. I felt that one, not going to lie, because now it wasn't just about me breaking a rule, it was about her paying for it later. And that's where things get messy, right? Doing the right thing doesn't always stay clean when consequences hit someone else. I turned back toward Marlene, took a couple steps closer. "If I keep going," I said quietly, just to her, "there's a chance they find you more." She held my gaze, and for a moment I thought she'd tell me to stop, to not risk it, to just let it be. Instead, she said something I didn't expect. "I've been careful for 2 years, she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Careful hasn't made it safer." That landed heavier than anything else that morning. I nodded once, slow, like I was locking in the decision. And then I turned back around, picked up the wand, and without saying another word, I pulled the trigger again. The machine roared back to life, water blasting against the concrete, cutting through the grime like nothing else mattered. Behind me, I heard him exhale sharply. "Sir, I'm instructing you to stop." I didn't turn around this time, didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't raise my voice. I just kept moving, steady, controlled, working section by section like I'd planned from the start. "Sir," he repeated, louder now, "this is your final warning." And I remember thinking, maybe he needed that warning to matter more than it did. Water kept moving, the clean path kept growing, and with every pass, that dangerous surface turned into something solid, something usable, something safe. I could feel his eyes on me the whole time, probably taking notes, maybe already planning the report, the fine, whatever came next. But for once, that wasn't the thing driving the moment. It was her. It was that doorway. It was the simple fact that when I was done, she'd be able to move across that space without fear. And honestly, that felt worth whatever came after. I didn't rush it. That's the part people always get wrong when they imagine moments like this. They think it's some big dramatic stand, fast, loud, defiant. But it wasn't like that at all. It was quiet, steady, almost stubborn in a calm way. Like I'd already made the decision, and now all that was left was to follow through on it. One pass at a time. The sound of the pressure washer filling the space where arguments used to be. And the wild thing is, after a while, he stopped talking. I don't know if it was because he realized I wasn't going to engage anymore, or because there's only so many times you can repeat the same warning before it starts to lose weight. But eventually, his voice just faded out, replaced by the hum of the machine and the steady sweep of water across concrete. And in that silence, something shifted. You could actually see it happening, not just on the driveway, but in the atmosphere around us. That dark, slick surface that had been sitting there for who knows how long, layer after layer of buildup, slowly gave way to something lighter, something safer, something that looked like it belonged to a home again, not a hazard. The clean path widened, stretching from the garage toward the sidewalk, like a line being drawn between what was and what could be. At one point I glanced up, just for a second, and saw Marlene still in the doorway, but her posture had changed. She was leaning forward slightly now, hands gripping the wheels not out of tension, but anticipation, like she was already imagining crossing it. And that did something to me. I'm not going to lie. It made the whole thing feel less like work, and more like purpose, I guess. Behind me I could still feel him there. Not as loud anymore, but present. The occasional shuffle of his shoes on the pavement, the faint scratch of a pen against paper. He was documenting, doing his job, building whatever case he thought he needed to build. And part of me respected that. I did. He wasn't a villain, not really. He was a guy with a role, a set of rules, and a responsibility to enforce them. The problem was, reality doesn't always line up neatly with policy. I worked my way to the final section, slowing down even more, making sure I didn't miss anything that could bring us right back to where we started. The edge near the street was the trickiest, so I angled the spray carefully, keeping the water controlled, pushing the debris back toward the grass instead of letting it run straight into the drain. Not perfect, but thoughtful, intentional. And then, just like that, it was done. I released the trigger, and the machine powered down. The sudden quiet, almost loud in its own way. For a moment, nobody said anything. It was just the three of us standing there, looking at a driveway that was no longer a problem. I stepped back, wiped my forehead with the back of my hand, and took a good look at it. Clean, not spotless, not brand new, but safe. And that was the whole point. Marlene rolled forward slowly, stopping right at the edge where the old surface met the new. She hesitated for a second, like her body still remembered what it used to feel like, the risk, the instability. And then she pushed gently on the wheels and moved forward. No slip, no wobble, just smooth. She let out this small breath, almost like she'd been holding it for years. "I forgot what this felt like," she said, more to herself than to me. And I don't know why, but that hit harder than anything else that morning. I smiled, nodded once. "You're good now." That's when I finally turned back toward him. He was still there, clipboard in hand, expression tighter than before, like he wasn't entirely sure what to do with what had just happened. Because on paper, yeah, I'd ignored a direct instruction, potentially violated a couple of guidelines, maybe even set him up to file a report he didn't really want to file. But in reality, the situation in front of him had changed completely. The hazard was gone. The homeowner was safer. The problem he'd been sent to enforce had been solved. We stood there for a second, just looking at each other, and then I broke the silence. "So, what happens now?" He exhaled slowly, glancing down at his notes, then back at the driveway. "I still have to document the incident," he said. "Not as sharp as before, more measured. There was non-compliant work performed after a verbal warning." "Yeah," I said, nodding. "Figured as much." His eyes shifted briefly toward Marlene, who was now a few feet out onto the driveway, turning her chair carefully, like she was testing every angle, every movement, making sure it was real. And for the first time since he showed up, I saw something different in his expression. Not agreement, not approval, but maybe understanding. Just a little. "The existing violation," he continued, "will likely be reevaluated." "That sounds like a good thing," I said. "It could be," he replied, then added, almost reluctantly, "depending on how it's reviewed." "Of course, there's always a depending, right?" I shrugged slightly, not pushing it. "Look, I get it. You've got rules to follow. And you chose not to," he said, but there wasn't much bite left in it. "Yeah," I admitted. "I chose not to." Another pause. Then he nodded, just once, like he was closing a file in his head. "Have a good day," he said, turning away, walking back toward his car without another word. And just like that, it was over. No dramatic ending, no big confrontation, no last-minute twist. Just a quiet resolution that didn't feel entirely clean, but felt real. I packed up my equipment, coiled the hoses, loaded everything back into the truck, while Marlene stayed out there a little longer, rolling back and forth on the driveway, like she was reclaiming something that had been taken from her. Before I left, she stopped near the edge and looked up at me. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You already did," I told her. "Just use it." She smiled at that. A real one this time, not the guarded kind from earlier. I will. I got in my truck, sat there for a second before starting the engine, looking out at that clean stretch of concrete, at her moving across it without hesitation, and I couldn't help but think about how close that moment came to not happening, all because of a line in a rule book. Now, here's the part I keep coming back to. He wasn't wrong. The rules weren't made for no reason. There are real risks with runoff, real liability concerns, real consequences when things go sideways. And if everyone just ignored the process whenever they felt like it, yeah, that could create a whole different kind of problem. But at the same time, standing there, seeing what I saw, knowing what I knew in that exact moment, I couldn't justify walking away and leaving things the way they were. So what do you do with that? What do you do when doing the right thing might technically be the wrong thing? That's not a question with a clean answer, and maybe that's the point. Because life doesn't always give you situations where the rules and the right thing line up perfectly. Sometimes you get moments like this, where you have to decide which one matters more, and then live with whatever comes after. So I'm curious, seriously, if you were standing where I was, hearing that warning, knowing the possible consequences, but also seeing her situation right in front of you, would you have stopped, or would you have kept going? Don't just scroll past that question like it's nothing. Take a second, think about it, and drop your answer in the comments. Because I've heard both sides, and I can tell you right now, not everyone agrees on what the right choice was here.